Honestly, guys. Honestly, dancehalling. I absolutely love this guy, Uncle Jing Jong. He's officially my uncle. 16 minutes past 8 a.m. We're so excited to be here. And sounds of Riley Leo, you've been exceptional. Si mimi, ni watu wanasema. Si mimi, it's not me.
Shukran.
The vibes are right here on Morning Vibes, and thank you so much kwa kila mtu mwenye amekuwa na sisi kuanzia the moment tulianza at 6 a.m. hapa tuko hapa 16 minutes past 8 a.m. And we're really excited because we've got an amazing conversation about to go down as we do every single Furahi day. And today we're keeping it a bit light and at the same time a bit heavy. We have a guest all the way from Uganda. Him himself, last time we were talking on the phone, but he's here right now in studio with us. I talk about BOBI Wine. Ladies and gentlemen, make some noise for the incomparable. Yeah, man, BOBI Wine. And I was like, if you show up without the beret, I'd be like, is this really you?
Actually, to make sure I'm not recognized, I try not to wear the beret all the time. But
really?
Again, now people recognize me by my jaws.
Yeah. Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah.
But like, how did the beret come about?
It's an inspiration. It certainly didn't start with me. We've had great men like Che Guevara, who inspires many of us and other revolutionaries, both gone and living. We have our brother Julius Malema and other Africans, other worldwide people that believe in struggle through revolution. So multiple inspirations from across the world. Of course, we have different struggles. Of course, we have different ideologies. But like Malcolm one time taught us that ideologies might differ, approaches might differ, strategies might differ, but the ultimate goal is complete freedom, complete liberty, complete equality, and that's what we share in common.
It's interesting. We started off with complete freedom.
Yeah,
is that really? Could you name one country that's completely free? Name a people who are completely free.
Well, I cannot put a hand on a country and say this country is completely free, because even the countries we admire have their own challenges. I mean, when you're in Uganda and you look at Kenya and their levels of freedom, you'll admire them. But they also find it wanting. So I will not point at a country that's completely free, because freedom is a constant struggle from generation to generation. After getting this freedom, you want another. After getting another freedom, you want to get more freedoms. I mean, I was in Europe recently, and these guys are struggling for animal rights. For us, we're still struggling for human rights. Struggling for rights to be human. So the struggle for freedom continues.
Aluta continues.
However, if you ask me to point at a country that's not free, I'll point at my home,
Uganda.
When
did your revolutionary spirit start? Because BOBI, we know you as a musician. In fact, a badass musician. So when you made that crossover, what was the trigger?
Man, I had always been concerned about the way my situation is, and I struggled my own struggle to get out of misery, out of poverty, and for me that was going to make me happy. Of course, after achieving it all, I realized that it was just a rat race. After climbing a mountain and you get to the top, you only realize there's an even higher mountain to climb. I had gotten successful as an artist, but this one day when I got beaten the hell out by a guy, my age mate, just because he had a gun and he was a security operative and he came from the right tribe and he had the right connections. And I mean, my crime was driving an expensive Class A Cadillac Escalade with spinning wheels. And this guy asked me, why are you showing off? Don't you know that this country has owners? For me, that triggered my move. But that was way over 10 years ago, But getting practically into the political trenches was looking around and, man, we are not getting solutions from these so-called intellectuals. In fact, they were the problem. And I said, ghetto youth, get involved. I started preaching to the ghetto youths and the young people out there to get involved. but I had to lead by example.
I mean, you've
This
always
way
been
we
the
are.
ghetto president. I remember over 10 years ago, we'd see you doing concerts, and we're like, this guy is so influential. It was not shocking that you crossed over to politics, because the young people were looking up to you, going to events and seeing the pull that you'd have. You definitely knew that there was something a bit different or very different from your other musician counterparts. Like we said, freedom is something that we consistently aspire, and you found yourself in the thick of things. 2021, 2020, 2021 especially. And we had a conversation that year, and we're talking about you were running for president. In a country where the president has been the president as
For
long as this
36
guy has
years.
been alive.
True.
As long as this guy has been alive, as long as I've
Probably
been alive.
yourself as well. I mean, over 85% of
Yeah.
the population in Uganda have never seen another president.
Someone will ask,
Yeah.
what's wrong with that?
What's wrong with what?
With him being president for 36 years?
What's wrong with a country having one president for 36 years? What's wrong with the situation being the same? What's wrong with, the longer, and General Museveni said it in 1986 when he had just taken power.
Yeah.
And I agreed with him. I still agree with him. He said Africa's problem in general and Uganda's problem in particular are the leaders that overstay in power. Because that breeds impunity, that reduces the obligation to accountability, that will disconnect them from reality, they cease to be accountable. Instead, the citizens start being accountable to them. It breeds sectarianism. It turns the nation into a monarchy. And so on and so forth. I mean, the reason why we have constitutions, although some people abrogate those constitutions much later, but the reason why we have term limits and age limits and all those caps is to make sure that there's always peaceful transitions from one leader to another. A country cannot produce only one talented person. I mean, most of the countries that have grown because their young people have been utilized. There's no hope for the young people when you have an 80-year-old president who believes he's going to rule for life, and then put his son, and you have seen what his son does. You Kenyans, now I no longer need to remind you of the cycle that we have back home. So that and more is supposed to show you that a leader should not be in power for life.
So for someone who's looking at it from outside and saying, then why has this continued to persist? Because even in neighboring countries that had, including ourselves, that had long-term presidents, I think we reached a place where we're like, okay, let's try something different. This is over 15 years ago.
Yeah.
Right? Why does this continue to persist from a Ugandan residents' perspective? Because there are elections, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on the legitimacy of the election. I've seen what you've said, but I'd love to hear what you have to say. Why do Ugandans continue to have Museveni then?
Well, the question should be, why does Museveni continue to have Ugandans? Because it's not Ugandans that have Museveni. It is Museveni that has Ugandans on gunpoint. The guy has his boot on our necks. He has intimidated people. He has silenced the academia, silenced religious leaders, silenced all the so-called intellectuals. That's why a person like me rose to the ghetto and said, yo, I don't give a shit. Do what you want to me, but I want to be free, alive or dead, Ugandans are certainly not comfortable with Museveni. And you're talking about elections, but I'm sure you've watched a few elections that we've had in the past. Most notoriously, the one we had last year in 2021, where I was abducted on the nomination day, beaten up and pepper sprayed, where on the 18th and 19th of November, today it is 2 years since Museveni ordered soldiers to massacre people on the streets of Uganda 24 months ago today, and more than 150 innocent unarmed civilians armed with only placards and T-shirts demanding for a freedom of a presidential candidate that had been illegally arrested. He massacred them and came out to brag about it. I mean, on the 30th of December 2020, my entire campaign team was abducted and put in military detention. Many of them are still there today. You know, we went into an election when the internet was switched off and radio stations switched off, journalists arrested. Nobody are allowed to supervise the election from my side. Election observers from EU and the US blocked away. I was under house arrest. That's the kind of election you're talking about. So it was just a sham election. But even sham as it is, we beat the hell out of General Museveni. Okay? Because out of the declaration of results forms that we were able to collect from across the country, even with the ballot stuffing, we still beat the guy. That means if it was a free and fair election, probably we would beat him by 85 or 90%.
Let's talk about the internet.
Yeah.
Because when the situation happened, so first there were some accounts that disappeared, and then there was the shutdown of the internet. And General Museveni was asked about this, and he said, you know, they're meddling, and having some people removed from social media then will block it, right? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I don't even know whether it needs thinking, really. I mean, the internet gets switched off because he does not want the world to know what is going on. He does not want people to communicate about the election. Ugandans have been communicating on Facebook mainly. Facebook was cut off 2 years ago. It has never been restored. Why? Because Ugandans can only express themselves on social media. The traditional media is gagged. I mean, it's almost impossible to have me on a radio station. It will be very hard for me to be live on a radio station like this because the old guy fears even the words that I say because they open the eyes of the people. Now, that's where we are. As we speak, Facebook is blocked in Uganda.
We get that. But what about the fact that some accounts were deleted?
But those accounts were deleted because they were reported. General Museveni runs an entire institution of disinformation. You know, like a whole 500 or 1,000 young people get up to go to work every day. Each one of them runs about 30 accounts to, you know, their duty is just to bash forces of change, is just to spew disinformation. Why? Because Museveni has no support. And we encourage the people of Uganda to find all means of communicating. Social media, of course, is the easiest in our generation. Now, for Museveni to fight back, he has to use taxpayers' money to disinform the people. Fortunately, we are many more than he can buy. And two, we are more informed than his old self. So, you know, they were reported, and after confirming that these actually are disinformation pages that are used by the regime, they were blocked. Museveni was angry. How do you remove my friends off Facebook? I'll remove it from Uganda. That's the pain of being under dictatorship. And now I hope that continues to answer your question, what's wrong with somebody overstaying in power?
Yeah. You clearly have support outside of Uganda. Who funds you?
I'm honestly trying to be polite. Yeah. Especially that this is a good vibes program.
Yeah.
Otherwise, if I was as arrogant as Museveni, I would term that as a silly question. Who funds me?
Yeah.
Do I have to be funded to speak the truth?
No.
I mean, how much does it cost for me to come on radio here and speak to Kenyans? And those that associate with the things that I'm saying, those that see examples will agree with me and they will support not me. I'll tell you, my sister, that people don't support me. No, I'm not the most good looking. People support the ideas that I stand for. They did not start with me, and they will not end with me. Even when I die today and somebody else comes and is saying exactly what I'm saying, he's going to be supported. General Museveni, when he was my age, okay, he got supported by my fathers and my mothers because he was standing for the right things. I can guarantee you that if I start spewing bullshit tomorrow, people are going to kick my ass out. Why? Because people support the values that I stand for, the truth that I stand for. Uganda has, over 85 under the age of 35. 80% of them are unemployed. Okay? They have suffered under the yoke of oppression. They want to free up. So nobody has to fund me. For what? You know why I'm disturbed by that question? Because dictators all over the world, when people rise and they demand for their rights, they say now that one is a foreign agent. That one is being funded. I don't have to be funded, man. I've been talking about this thing in my music for the last 20 years. Now I'm only speaking about them without even a beat. If I had a beat, it would be a massive one. But I don't have a beat behind me. I'm speaking these things a cappella, so that people can understand. But I've been singing about this. So I don't have to be funded, my sister.
Who supports you? Aside from Uganda.
Oppressed people. Oppressed people. My message is not only for Ugandans. I'm Ugandan. But I'm also Kenyan, also Tanzanian. I am African. These borders are colonial borders. Okay? What hurts people in Uganda is what hurts people across Africa. And the reverse is true. So, I don't know who supports me, and I don't want to know, because I don't want them to support me. Okay, we must not reduce ourselves to individuals. This is not a BOBI wine thing.
Yeah,
it's a freedom thing. It's a people power thing.
But BOBI, you have to agree that first you've set a picture of a very dictatorial situation, which you got in because of a situation where someone is telling you we own the country. And you're an individual.
Yeah.
And then you decide, I'm going to stand against this. I'm going to stand against the system. And I've asked you, why don't other Ugandans, wake up and do the same, right? Because
they are waking up, and I want many, many more of them to wake up. I was asleep myself. I'm very late, I must tell you, my sister.
But that's the thing. You come from the same place, and you've got this revolutionary spirit. So what is it that you, and I'm sure you got support, there must be something that encouraged you to say, enough is enough. And as you're moving, there are people that are fueling your movement. For example, when you were abducted, you left Uganda. Right? That is support. Because at the end of the day, it trickles down to, this is the leader of the nation. And you're coming through and saying, there's something wrong here.
Yes.
Do you fear for your life?
Of course I do, man. Of course I do, man. So many people have gotten killed for doing this that I'm doing. As I speak now, my bodyguard, Jamshid Kavma, was abducted. 14 days, it's 2 weeks today. We don't know where he is. Soldiers came in national uniform. Others did not have uniform but had AK-47 assault rifles. They are captured on camera. They kicked his door. They took him away. Like they've done many times publicly. They do this they even execute people extrajudicially on camera. And they are so used to this because they have always gotten away with it. So why wouldn't I fear for my life? I'm challenging Africa, in fact, the world's most brutal dictator. Why wouldn't I fear for my life? But I also know that I'm a dead man already. Okay? So I want to do as much damage to the dictatorship as possible while I still can.
Remember, you're on Morning Vibes, and we're speaking with BOBI Wine. BOBI, did you read about America wanting to arrest Connie? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think America, while I disagree with what is reported about Connie, I disagree with Connie's actions, especially if they are true. But as a person that knows General Museveni, I know that what is reported about Joseph Kony could actually be wrong. I mean, General Museveni has mastered the art of false flag operations. Now, what is a false flag operation? A false flag operation is something that is done to tarnish another. For example, I'll come, put on a T-shirt of this radio and go do something nasty to tarnish the name of this radio.
Yeah.
General Museveni, when he was still a rebel, he did this. His minister, Kainda Twafire, one time, a few years ago, opened up at a funeral of Adonia Tiberondo in Western Uganda and said they used to, when they were still fighting against President Obote, they would put on the government uniform, go massacre people, kill people mercilessly to tarnish the image of Obote. And it worked. People hated Obote. In fact, even up to now, we still have those tribal divisions. People think Obote and his tribesmen killed them. Museveni was doing that to get the people hate Obote's government so that they can support him.
Yeah.
He has done that numerous times. Okay, we have reports that even some of the killings are done so that General Museveni can put it on his opponents. We have seen the filmings of Connie, but we've not heard from Connie's side.
Yeah.
The little that we heard about him during the failed peace talks, he revealed that Museveni goes and kills people and then puts it on Connie. The people from northern Uganda, that affected area that I've spoken to, have intimated to me that Museveni soldiers have gone on rampage in northern Uganda, sodomized people, killed people, or massacred people, and then put it on Connie. Unfortunately, for a very long time, Museveni has had the ear and the favor of the Western allies, to the extent that in the 90s, President Bill Clinton called him a new breed of leaders in Africa. Part of my mission is to pull that nasty mask, that beautiful mask off Museveni's nasty face, so that the world sees him for what he is. And we are succeeding. Recently, we started screening a film, a documentary film that shows just my side of the story. But people are shocked that Museveni is this brutal dictator that they never knew. So don't tell me about Connie's business until I hear about him.
From Connie's side.
Yeah. I mean, we have a brother, Jamil Mukulu, who was arrested. General Museveni was smart to get him even indicted internationally. But this guy has been held for 8 years without trial. And the only chance he got to shout to the media, he shouted and said Museveni is the one that arms us and does all that stuff. So Museveni has succeeded so much in woodwinking the people to the extent that I go on radio and they ask me who funds me. Young people like me who know that actually nobody has to fund you when you're carrying a good message. Who was funding Jesus Christ? Who was funding Prophet Muhammad? Who is funding the Dalai Lama? Who was funding Mandela? Maybe the question should be, who is fanning you? And I say the fans are fanning me.
No, nobody funds me. Now let's move to a larger conversation, because Uganda doesn't stand as an island. It stands in a community, that's the East African community, which is making big strides.
Yeah.
But how effective has the East African community been for all East Africans from a Ugandan standpoint?
It hasn't. It hasn't. In my view, and in the view of so many Ugandans, the East African community is but just a club of presidents. That shouldn't be like that. We are not an East African community. We, the people, are so together. We connect. But if it was an East African community, it should be about the values. What do we share in common? Democracy, respect for human rights, respect for the rule of law. Then what kind of East African community are we? Would you really want to associate with Uganda politically? Would you want to import? Would you want Uganda to export some of the police brutality here? Would you want Uganda to export some of the political backwardness here? I mean, you've been there in the 80s and the 90s, the days of Moi, when opponents were held in prison, when you had a one-party state, etc., etc., and you grew out of that. Okay, so you would want a community of nations that shares the same values. Otherwise, this is just a club of incumbents.
But what about, someone would say, trade? now that borders, we have the East African passport, which means if you're doing business here, you can move within the community and conduct whatever business. If you are selling your products, you don't need to just think about Kenya. You can also think about Uganda, Tanzania, DRC, and so many others.
Trade, but at what levels? I will remind you that the East African community was much more vibrant 50 years ago. It has just, students used to come from Uganda, study from Kenya, and those from Kenya go to Tanzania and all through the region. Our mothers used to work from various countries, and so were yours. We even at one time almost shared a currency.
Yes.
It's not the same anymore. The infrastructure levels, whatever we agree about, look at the standard gauge railway.
Yeah.
You Kenyans did your part. I'm not saying you did it perfectly, but you did your part. Look at us. So it's unfortunate that I'm supposed to be here drumming and painting a beautiful picture of Uganda, where I come from. But unfortunately, I'm not a liar. I'll just be here and speak the truth. We are lagging behind. We're supposed to be at the same level with Kenya in terms of democracy, in terms of infrastructure and otherwise. But we're being held back. We got stuck in 1986 with an old school leader that only looks at keeping power at all cost. And that has been our challenge.
Now let's talk the future. I want us to take a short break because, one day, Museveni won't be there.
Yeah.
So what does the future of Uganda look like, hypothetically, in BOBI Wine's hands? Remember, you're on Morning Vibes, 17 minutes to 9 a.m. You're hanging out with Convokes. You're captain of Good Vibes.
Sounds of Riley.
This is the Modern Vibes on Vibes Radio.
Yo.
Ballots, bullets. 2020 was the year this one dropped. Bullet or Ballot, that's BOBI Wine and Buju Banton. That's what you call a Uganda and Jamaica collabo. And what's extremely special about this collabo is that this was like a few months after Buju had left prison. How did you guys link up?
Natural mystic. Yeah, Buju and I linked up in Jamaica. I had gone for the Rebel Salute concert.
Yeah.
I'd been his fan for a long time. He'd been reading about me in prison. So when he, got out of prison, he reached out.
Yeah.
I was honored to work with him. And then we did that song. Yeah.
Bullet or Ballot.
Yeah, man.
It's a dope song.
Ballot or bullet.
Ballot or Bullet. Yes, it's a dope song.
One comes before the other.
One comes before the other. Now, here's the question. If you're just tuning in, of course, Shoni Morning Vibes, and we'll be speaking here with BOBI Wine, what do you call yourself? Because I want to call you the presidential aspirant. I want to call you revolutionary leader. What do you call yourself? I want to call you a musician.
I call myself me.
Comrade.
I don't remember having to call myself by name. Yeah. I don't know, call me anything, man.
What's your title? What title do you
I don't believe in titles, man. I'm just BOBI. In fact, BOBI is also a nickname coming from Robert. My real name is Chagulanyi Sentamu.
yeah.
My mother used to call me Robert. My friends call me BOBI. My wife calls me Honey.
Yeah.
My children call me
Daddy.
Tata. So now that you're my friend, please call me BOBI.
Last year, I watched 2021, actually, when things were really hot. I saw your family also, really in the thick of things with you.
Yeah.
When your mom, when your family sees you in this space,
Yeah.
where you're saying, I'm ready to die, I'll fight these powers. Well, other people in the country cannot even say some of these things. What do they say? How do they carry these emotions?
For my mom, I am glad that she rested long ago when I was still a young boy, so she doesn't have to get the heart attack. For my wife, it's been hell. It's been hell, but I continue to salute her. She has been this amazing woman. She has replaced my mother in so many ways. She's my pillar of strength, and I think every man deserves a woman like her in his life. Of course, for my children, it's been disturbing, very disturbing, watching them traumatized. But that's, if that's their part to play, let them play it. I explain to them, to all of them. I tell them some children have lost their fathers and their mothers and they won't see them again. At least me, I go to prison and I come back, at least so far. For many of my family members, they've had to ask me politely not to visit them.
Wow.
Because I'm trouble. It's been tough. But I don't only look at the negative side. I look at the positive side. By standing for what I stand for, it has brought me so many friends and so much love. Of course, besides cracking all my businesses and messing up all my other life, glad enough I don't depend on money. I depend on positivity and love. It has brought a lot of friends, a lot of love, a lot of, positivity. And I know that much, just like all the children in Uganda became my children, at least most of the people that support me became parents to my children as well. And that's a sense of security, social security.
Let's imagine a world where you won the election.
Don't just imagine that world. You are living in that world. I won the election. I am the legitimate president of Uganda. So talk to me nicely, sister.
So now, let's imagine that you were the one ruling the country right now. Now
leading the country.
Yes, leading the country. Now would be 1 year and some months in. What changes would Ugandans be seeing already?
Amazing changes. Of course, the first thing that I would do, in fact, the first thing that I will do, because sooner or later, I'll still be leading the country. We'll immediately scrap off all those silly laws, the so-called Computer Misuse Act, where you are not allowed to film a crime and expose it. That will scrap it, will completely scrap. Yes, it's been challenged, but it will be completely scrap. The bogus public order, Public Order Management Act, which prohibits more than 5 people meeting. Never mind, you can meet 10,000 people if you're meeting to get drunk and have fun and dance bend over. But if you are meeting to discuss the future of your nation and you are 5 people, you must seek permission from the Inspector General of Police. How stupid is that, We will scrap all the oppressive taxes, and then we will embark on a transformation of a country. My focus would be on health and education first and foremost. Health and education will revamp our healthcare system. It is sick and sickening. We'll revamp our education system. Of course, we'll focus on agriculture because Uganda has historically been the breadbasket of the region until when our agriculture was crushed down. We would immediately, cut the power of the president in action. I mean, most of these things are provided for within the law, but it's unfortunate that the law has not been respected. So the impunity would stop immediately. Everybody would be held accountable. And
how many terms would you do?
I would
now
never
it'd be 1 year.
I would never change the constitution. That's one thing I would tell you. In fact, I would ensure that term limits are tightened and engraved with no chance of ever changing the constitution to open for life presidency. Yeah.
Speaking of term limit, there were some comments that were made here in Kenya that got you talking.
Yeah.
You addressed Kenyans and you were like, when you start to see such conversation, then you should be worried because term limits are. I was reading a quote from a publication where you had spoken about this, and they were saying that your concerns were that we as Kenyans should be concerned about such utterances because that's how dictatorship begins.
You should.
But it was one guy who mentioned it.
Yes, that's how it starts. They don't mention it in a chorus. It starts like one errant guy making his own irresponsible statements, And indeed, the top leaders might actually deny it. But they're always testing the waters. And before you know, as bogus as it starts being public debate. All they want is to make it a public debate. So you should be concerned. I mean, we've been there as Ugandans. We've seen that. That's how General Museveni started removing term limits and later the age limit. And today, he's pushing a scheme to remove presidential elections. Now, it sounds funny. It sounds unbelievable. But if it's not resisted, if it's not stopped, it happens. That's where we are. You don't want to go there, dear Kenyans. You don't want to go there. Yeah.
A lot of young Kenyans are listening to you right now, and they look at you as, a beacon of hope. A lot of youth in Kenya support you. Currently in Kenya, we're facing economic strife, drought, lots of insecurity. A lot of youth have taken to the streets to take part in crime. Others are working and, having challenges here and there. And it's really especially frustrating. What word would you give them? Especially the ones who've decided, you know what? I'm just going to fight for myself on the street.
Yeah.
And they've gotten into crime. And defending it.
Well, I'm the kind of guy that likes to tell or teach fellow young people. I don't even know if I'm still a young person anymore. But I'm the kind of person that likes to teach or encourage people on how to think, but what to think. Be open-minded, and don't think just for yourself. Think for everybody. Because we as Africans, we have what we call Ubuntu. We are because I am, and I am because we are. What you do affects all, and what somebody else does affects you, either directly or indirectly. Of course, be positive. Of course, avoid crime. Crime does not pay. I've been there. Stay away from drugs. Stay away from alcohol, excessive alcohol, from irresponsible sex. Work hard. Work hard. But most importantly, hold your leaders accountable, because it all rises and falls with leadership. And where possible, get involved, either by leading or by holding leaders accountable. You don't have to run for political office to be a leader. You can actually be a leader by influencing opinion, positive opinion, by challenging people to think with their heads, not with their bellies. Yeah.
This has been a good conversation. There's so many other things we could have spoken about, but time is not on our side. Why are you in Nairobi?
I'm in Nairobi, not alone, with other opposition leaders, Dr. Kiza Besigye, General Mugisha Muntu, the entire leadership of the party I lead, and other political parties, opposition political parties in Uganda. We are here to commemorate 2 years of the November massacre. On the 18th and 19th of November, like I said, many Ugandans were massacred. They continue to be killed, abducted, and all other manners of torture, in Uganda. Unfortunately, we are under military dictatorship. We cannot have that conference in Uganda. So we held a conference here yesterday in Nairobi, the Uganda Human Rights Accountability Conference, where we were joined by Honorable Martha Karua and the Kenya Human Rights Commission, because we know at least that we belong to a region, although that unification, that integration has not translated into what East Africans desire. But the little that we have of it, we try to use it. I mean, Kenya, you have always stood with us. Yeah. You Kenyans saved my life. You remember in 2018, if you guys did not start the protests here that spread to the entire world, that put General Museveni on tension and finally released me, maybe I would be a dead man. So I always look at Kenya as a home away from home. So we're here for that Human Rights Accountability Conference. It went so good. It's unfortunate. We should have held that conference back home, but we couldn't.
Yeah. Thank you so much. I like your for those who are listening, his beret says people power.
Our power.
Our power.
Yeah, man.
Thank you so much
And
for
it
this
has that
conversation.
fist of Dedan Kimathi that says we are not going to stop.
Love it.
Yeah, man.
Thank you so much. That's
Cheers.
been an awesome conversation with BOBI Wine, aka Robert Changulanyi. And we're at the top of the hour. It's now 9 a.m.
Blessed vibration.